Welcome to Back on the Broomstick,
A modern witch's spoken word grimoire.
where two witchy friends from way back are reconnecting to their pagan roots after a long period of mundanity.
We're rewalking the path of the wise and trying out all the latest spells, rituals, and magical theory in today's witchcraft and pagan practices.
So grab your wand and your incense
Your cauldron and your crystals
and join us
as we get
back on the broomstick.
Hi, and welcome to Back on the Broomstick. I'm Layla, and on this episode, we have a very special guest. We're here to talk about creating community. And with us, we have one of my favorite witches, someone who helped to create the community here in Corning, Crystal City Circle, Shannon Bronico Hodges. Shannon is a witch from way back, but she was a solitary for a long time. Reached out on Reddit of all places, and the rest is history.
And I'm Chelle, and I am super excited for this conversation today because what better thing to start off the summer season than to talk about community and creating community? You know, we've had a lot of listeners ask about how to create community. Is it possible for them to create community where they are located? And we wanted to bring our good friend Shannon in today to talk about how do you do this? What's involved? What's the task at hand? And welcome, Shannon. We're so glad you're here.
Welcome, Shannon.
Hi, guys. Thank you for having me. And I'm really excited to talk about this with you today.
Yay. I'm so glad that you're here. And I'm very excited because this is getting close to our 1 year anniversary of when you and I met.
Yes, it is.
So that's pretty exciting. And if you would please tell us a little bit about your background as a witch. Now, you're an eclectic pagan witch. And, you know, when we met, I think we had a shared love of books and learning. So can you tell us a little bit about your background?
I have actually not been practicing terribly long. I think I'm coming up on my fourth year of being on my pagan and witchcraft path. I'm very eclectic. Like you said, I really like reading a lot. Like you said, I read a lot of books. I take in a little from here, I take in a little from there. And that's been my learning path thus far. I first started on this path while I was still living in Syracuse. I lived in Syracuse before I came to Corning for a couple of years, and I found drawn to that world, and of course had my Scott Cunningham book kind of started there, and then
Yes.
everything kind of spiraled outward into pulling in things from heathenry and traditional witchcraft and all these other places that piqued my interest. And I spent all of my time on my own, reading, trying things out, meditating, teaching myself tarot, and it was super fulfilling. But as time went on, it was pretty obvious that it could not keep going on the same way, and something was missing.
Yeah. Like a lot of us, we started out that way. Shell and I started out that way because we didn't really know a lot of witches. And even now it's difficult to connect with witches and pagans. But you kind of feel like you hit that plateau. Like you reach a point where you're like, this is great, but I would really love to do this with other people and try this with someone else, with a group.
Exactly.
It's hard to figure out how to reach out. You feel this pull. Then what happens? What do you do?
Yeah, that's what started to happen. I got to a point where I knew a lot. I Not everything was put into practice yet, but I had a lot of information, and it just felt part of it felt empty. The connection was there with my beliefs and with nature, but it would have been really great at that point to have a shared connection with people who held the same beliefs and had the same feelings and were interested in the same ways of being and existing in the world. That kind of connection and community. You can't get that out of a book. In Syracuse, there were communities there, but reaching out, first of all, I knew Syracuse wasn't going to be where I stayed forever. So by the time I was interested in community, I was already planning on moving to Corning. So I didn't want to put down any firm roots there. But even there, reaching out and finding events and groups, it's nice to be able to go to things, but having a one-off event isn't the same thing as having your people around you that you can
Right.
really rely on and connect with and who can really know you and you can grow with. So there is a difference, right?
And in upstate New York, we have the benefit of Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse are all larger cities, and they all have thriving pagan communities that are relatively easy to find. You can find them on Facebook. If you go to the UU Church, if you go to the metaphysical shops, you can find connections there. So it's not too difficult to find pagans around. And there's also pagan pride days at both Buffalo and Syracuse. So that helps. But then you come down to the southern tier of New York and it's crickets.
Yes.
There's not a lot here. There's pretty much nothing here. So that was hard for me as well. Yet I moved very close. I'm in Pennsylvania, close to the New York State border, very close to Corning, New York. And I have to say, having Crystal City Circle here has been an absolute joy. I am so glad that this worked out because we get people from about an hour away and the group is still growing. And tell us a little bit, please, if you would, before we get into how we started, why don't you tell us a little bit about what Crystal City Circle, the community that you helped found, you did found. Can you tell us what it's like, what it is?
As you said before, we're coming up on our first year. So we've made it a whole year and grown a whole lot from the beginning to now. Well, like you said, we'll talk a little bit about what that looked like at the beginning, but definitely we went from, I think it was 3 people showing up to the very first
Yeah.
event we had. And now we have, I'd say, a core group of 12 or so people who come to most of our events, and another 10 or 12 who kind of pop in and out when they have time and when they have interest. And what it feels like, so first of all, we have different things. We have workshops where we can learn together. We'll have either Layla or myself or Chelle or another member present something that they know a little bit about, and we all learn together, which is always awesome. We do those on Saturdays, usually once a month. And then, of course, we celebrate Sabbats together. And what started to happen was that community that was just based around learning and having these kind of structured activities. What ends up happening is you find people who are, like I said before, really your people. You develop connections.
Like-minded people. Yeah.
Yeah, you have connections you never thought you can have. You change too. I'd say my practice changed so much from the time I started interacting with this group to now. I'm doing things that I didn't do when I started, and I see things in ways I never could have without that influence from these other practitioners. Like, books can't give you everything you need. You need people, you need community. Um, if not regularly, at least sometimes.
Yeah. Like, for example, this community has a book club, and we are currently reading Matt Aren's Psychic Witch.
Yes.
That's a thick one to get through. There's a lot of exercises in it. And as we found in a couple of our get togethers, doing those exercises on your own is one thing, but sometimes it can be easier when you get in a group and then try it together and try it different ways and see what worked for other people. We found that getting together and sharing those ideas made it click so much better and work so much easier than any of us did on our own.
You can't see your own blind spots, and that goes for anything in life, but particularly when you're trying to learn a practice or maybe try out things like certain meditations, certain workings, and you're just stuck and it feels like it's not going where you want it to go. It really helps to have other people who see things a little differently than you to give you that perspective and help you kind of get over that plateau.
But seeing what it has turned into over the year from kind of a little bit more of a outsider perspective, because I've only been around for the last several months. What this community does, and I think what you've created, Shannon, and Layla as well, is the diversity of the experience. Like you said, Layla, there's a book club, and Shannon, you said there's the Sabbats, there's workshops, there's all kinds of things going on that you can or don't have to participate in, and that all adds to the group. Maybe you only want to go to rituals and you're not interested in workshops, or maybe you're only interested in workshops and not rituals. There's a group online that talks specifically about divination and astrology, and you can talk to that little subgroup about that, or about familiars and that little subgroup. And I think to see what a dedicated small group of people who really just want to flourish together spiritually can do in a short amount of time is just amazing. And to see that both of you actually have brought this to this area is just amazing. So I want to kind of take a step back, Shannon. How did this all start? What you wake up one day and you're like, I want a community, damn it. Then what? How did you start this? How did this desire or this need for connection turn into the workshops and the rituals and the book club and all that it is today?
Yeah, so like I said, I got to that point where I knew something was kind of missing. And maybe I was in a little bit of denial about what was missing because I think this is a really important thing to know about me and this whole story that's about to come. I am a super introvert, super, super, super introvert. My favorite person to spend time with is myself. I like my space. The idea that I somehow craved connection with the community was kind of surprising even to myself. And I think I was hesitant at first because, first of all, I was reaching out. I wasn't finding a place like Layla said. Corning is much smaller than even Syracuse. Not a lot of existing groups. I tried Magica Mandorca. Sorry, what is it? It's Magica
Mandragora
Mandragora.
Magica.
Mandragora Magica. Thank you.
Yep.
I tried them, but everywhere seemed really far away and also very specific in practice, maybe too specific for someone like myself who was still growing. So I did try a few things first. And then I realized, okay, there is a vacuum, there is a need. There must be other people who want this. There has to be somebody else. You see things in your day-to-day life. You see a person pass, you're like, maybe that person's like me. Something about them, they have to be.
You see the triple moon with the pentacle on the back window. My other
Yeah,
car is a broom. You see it.
yes,
You see it.
you see it. So I'm like, I'm definitely not alone, but we are not all out together. We're not all connecting together.
Right.
So I realized at that point that if it doesn't exist, somebody has to make it. And there was a lot of hesitation there too. Who am I to do this? I am a super introvert. How am I going to run a community? I only have about 2 years of practice under my belt. Who am I to lead something like this? And I feel like a lot of you might be feeling that as well if you're thinking about broaching the topic of, what would it be like if I formed community, if I was that person? I have to tell you, the most important thing is that you're willing to do it, that you're willing to put the time and energy into it. Do you have that drive and that motivation and that desire for connection and having connection with other people? That's all you need. You are the person to do it. If you have those things, you check all the boxes. The other
That's
stuff will
right.
come with time. You will figure the rest out together. In light of that, I went on to the ever faithful Reddit.
I love Reddit. I've spoken before of my love of Reddit.
Yes, Reddit, where you could find pretty much anything. And I did. I put my message out. I just took my shot. I said, hey, is there anyone who has any connection to any community in the area, has any events? Is there anyone who celebrates Sabbats? And if not, I'd be very interested in starting something if you were interested in starting something. It was something like that. I put a message out and I waited. And then what happened, Layla?
Well, I was fresh off of having been to a Pride Day event in local Pennsylvania town, small Pennsylvania town, and there were so many witches there. It was insane. Everywhere I turned, there were witches. It was amazing. And it got me thinking that, like you had said, Shannon, there are so many of us around, but there's no groups, there's no community, there's no connection here. So I happened to be the very next month at Brushwood Folklore Center hanging out. I was working on the podcast and okay, so I was slacking off working on the podcast and I went to Reddit, my faithful Reddit that I adore, and I looked in the local community because I had been thinking about maybe posting possibly, but I too am an introvert, surprise. And lo and behold, today there was a post. Any witches in the area? Okay, that's not exactly what it said, but to me, it was like screaming, are there witches out here? And I was like, oh, hi, hey, yes, hi, I'm a witch. I'm in the area. I would love to start community with you. And Shannon and I connected there. I'm like, I'm at this thing. Here's a link, but I'll be back soon and we can get together when I get back. Let's get together on August 1st. And I think Shannon was a little surprised at how enthusiastic I was.
I was grateful and very excited that you were that enthusiastic because you don't know who you're going to find. You don't know if someone's going to be as motivated as you, as on the same page as you, have that same drive. And fortunately, we were a very good match for each other.
As well as the same vision. Yeah.
Yes, we
Yes.
got together that first day, August 1st. We get to the cafe. You walked out as I'm walking in, and I knew it was you immediately. Like we both were immediately eyes connected. We were like, oh, hey, like we had known each other
Hey, it's
forever.
you.
Yeah. It was great. I felt so comfortable meeting you. And again, I'm an introvert. I don't feel comfortable meeting people, but it was great meeting you. And we had such a good first meeting.
I did immediately see you and think, that's definitely her. That can't be anybody else. That's her. And it was a great meeting. We just started talking like we've known each other for some time. And I think we were so on the same page about our mission that when we got sitting at that table, everything just flowed. Everything came out. It was meant like that we were to meet and get all that out and to start planning together. I've said to you many times that this thing will move itself. I think we had a lot of Eight of Wands energy behind us.
Yes.
We kind of started it and then it just felt like it kept moving without us almost. And we were just catching up to it.
From that very first day that we planned the first meeting, and like you said, it was like three people that came. It's gotten bigger and bigger ever since then. And those three people still come. They're
They
still
do.
here.
Now, Layla and Shannon, talk to me a little bit about, tell me about, walk me through what was it like? So you two meet in a coffee shop and it was like the stars have aligned, we're going to do
Oh,
this. Now, I just happen to know, fast forward, that you guys, the group, the community currently utilizes a local UU church to do a lot of rituals as well as a member's private property. How do you go from I've sent a Reddit message to where are we going to have our first ritual? How are we going to kind of put this out there to the area? Like, walk me through, you met at the coffee shop and now we're doing a public ritual. How did that come together? What are the pieces to make that happen? Because that could be a sticking point for people who may not have the private property or don't know who to ask or where to go or what to do as far as where can I do a ritual.
Well, let me say real quick, I'm going to let Shannon answer that, but I just very quickly want to say that Crystal City Circle, the community that we started, was specifically started to be a community and not a coven. This is a place for everyone to come and meet. And yes, we do a lot of magic, we do a lot of ritual together. That's the point. But this is for everyone. This is not a closed circle or private circle in any way. This is a community where people of all different pagan faiths come together. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands just the difference there. So
yes. And it's an important difference because when we first sat down together, we really had to ask ourselves, like, what do we want this to be? And yeah, like you're saying, Shell, where are we going to do this? My house is not big enough to have all these
right.
strangers coming on in to, join our community. So I think that's when you lean on the community itself, actually. You look around you and you look for what institutions and places are there. Libraries, libraries. I can't stress it enough.
Yes.
Your
Love
library is
libraries.
a sacred space.
Yes.
And it is a place where a lot of people who are probably somewhat pagan adjacent probably already go. I recommend if you have a library anywhere near you to get in touch with them. We were really lucky because that's where we had our very first meeting in a community room of a library. There was no fee. They had enough space. They were welcoming, and they continue to be a great partner in our pursuits. I really love the library.
One of my favorite partners in the community because just like you said, Shannon, not only did they have a space for us, but they've allowed us to grow. They had a bigger space for us. They're very welcoming when we come in. They're excited to see us
They are.
and they have so many resources there. And so it's a nice touch point for anyone in the community. And it helps some people who might be a little nervous. They might not feel comfortable going to someone's home at first, but a library is a safe place. It is a community space and it does almost feel sacred in that, you walk in and it's like, oh, the hush and the books. And I just love a library. Anyway, so library, yes, definitely first, that was our
Library.
first partner.
So library works. If there's other places as well, some communities have community centers or civic buildings or other public spaces that welcome group use. You can look into that. Everybody's situation is going to vary a little bit. But the big question came up with Sabbats and outdoor celebrations and ritual. Where are we going to have this? Like Layla said, everyone's not going to want to go to some random person they've never met's backyard to stand around a fire and do they don't know what in the night, right?
Right.
So
Nor is that person going to want a bunch of strangers showing up at their house. And yeah, yeah.
yes, exactly. That's the other thing. You being a leader or a starter or a co-founder of a community, your privacy and your safety is also very important. So once you get to know people, you can, let those boundaries change a little bit. But in the beginning, you really want to make sure to keep things public, keep things safe for you and for them. That's definitely something I'd recommend. We always have to practice a little caution in these things. Even Layla and I, the first time we met at a cafe, just in case, right?
Just
We
in
didn't know
case.
who I was. So you will have to take into consideration that kind of thing. Fortunately for us, nearby in Big Flats, a town next to Corning, there is a Universal Unitarian Fellowship.
Yes.
And like the library, very welcoming, very open community, also sacred space. So they were very open and willing to have us use those spaces for our outdoor rituals.
Now, Unitarian Universalist churches are one of my loves. And thankfully, my old community, our old community, Shell, our wintertime.
So in our old community, what we would do, we've talked about this in the past, from Beltane to Samhain, we were on outside land, private property land, of one of the community members. And then from Samhain to Beltane, throughout the winter months, we would actually hold our Sabbath rituals inside a Universal Unitarian Church in Binghamton, New York. And it was a fabulous space. They were fabulous to us. And I really think that the Universal Unitarians are open and friendly no matter what city or state you're in.
Yeah, and there's very often a covenant of Unitarian Universalist pagans chapters in a lot of these fellowships, a lot of these churches, and they are almost all of them. I can't think of any that aren't pagan welcoming or pagan
Right.
leaning. They're just
Yeah.
very wonderful, wonderful spaces. So if you ever go into a community, we've mentioned it on the podcast before, one of the first places to check for local pagans is the Unitarian Universalist Church in your area. Even if they don't have a CUPS chapter, they will probably have information about local pagans. Ours here does not have a CUPS chapter, but they would certainly put people in our direction. And we did a presentation at the church there, Shannon as well. So we work with them, and some of their members have come to our rituals. We've gone to some of their sermons. So it's a very good relationship between us and the Unitarian Universalist Church here.
Yeah, it's been a really good relationship that we've had with them. And it also gives you an immediate community connection. There's already a group of people there. And we did find a few members among them who became more regular members of our own group as well.
So reaching out to people in the community requires organization. And
Oh, yes.
thankfully, Shannon has that in spades. So being able to talk to people and ask the church, there is a fee. It's usually minimal, or well, it depends on the church. There's usually a fee to rent the space to help the Unitarian Universalist churches, but that's to be expected anywhere that you go. So now you have to take into account, you have to keep track of money and keep track of the places that you're going and put up notices. You have to let people know where and when these events are going to happen. And you have to schedule your workshops and perform, schedule who's going to do the rituals. So can you tell us a little bit about the administrative side of starting a community?
Yes, definitely. So something that has been extremely useful is Discord.
Yes.
Once someone comes to a face-to-face meeting and we know them, we invite them into the Discord, which is where we have more conversations, more learning, more interactions. That's where we do our scheduling. So some of the events we do are public and anyone can come out to meet us and learn more about the community of those public events. But some of the things we do, like book club, are for people we've met face to face, people we already know well enough to invite to our homes or onto private property. So a lot of that happens on Discord. Discord is a great tool. I think Shell was talking about it a little earlier, how we separate it into conversation channels. There's a place for people who want to talk about astrology or divination or deity work or any
Yeah.
manner of
Yeah.
things. It also has events and you can coordinate there. I've really liked Discord. It's free to set up and you can very easily share QR codes for people to join. You could set rules. You can boot people if you don't want them there anymore. Hopefully it doesn't happen to you, but you have ways to protect your privacy. And it's been really useful. But planning I think you have to think about what you want for the community too. And I'm going to talk about this here for a moment, what you can do and what you commit to. We were talking before about who's the right person to start a community, who's the right person to be a leader or help facilitate shared space. That kind of person has to know themselves and their boundaries and what they can commit. If you want to keep a thing going and growing, you have to really take a good look at yourself and what you can do first. Because we all have lives, we have jobs, we have
Yes.
families, we have personal interests, we have hobbies. We need our mental health to be balanced out. We don't want to overwhelm ourselves. That's a surefire way to watch a community come apart. So, really take into account what you can do and what you can offer.
And I'm going to jump in here and say that as soon as you do create a community, everyone's going to be so excited. We're going to get a little overexcited and a little overzealous, and people will overextend themselves. It's going to happen. So be prepared for it and be ready to sometimes say no.
Yeah, I think part of facilitating is there's a kind of empathy where you kind of keep an ear out and notice if the overwhelm is starting to hit. You can see in the Discord if people are hesitant or maybe canceling or feeling a little overwhelmed by responsibility. When you see those kind of things happen, I think one of the major responsibilities of a community leader is to keep that a space that is pleasant and welcoming to be in, something that you want to go back to. You don't want it to be work. You don't
Right.
want it to be a job for anyone. You don't want it to feel stressful. That's not how connection and learning and connection to your spirituality happens. Those are for other parts of life. So when we detect that kind of thing happening, we check in with our community and we kind of recalibrate and get everybody on the same page, see how people are feeling. It's okay to cancel something and change plans. It's not a failure. Sometimes you are just adjusting to what the community needs. So
Now, talk to me for a minute about you stated that you had been kind of new to witchcraft, had been practicing for a few years, but generally in a solitary situation.
mhm.
So, for someone who is in that same situation and they've never really worked with a group before, what is it like planning that first ritual? This is your first ritual that you are planning with people other than you yourself and you. How does that come about?
Was that Mabon? Was it Mabon that first one we
It
planned?
was
Or
Mabon. Mabon was the first ritual. And that was my first ritual because, again, I was a solitary. So I didn't have any previous experience to fall back on. I was fortunate because I had you, Layla, as a resource. So I learned with you. But if you're a person who's doing this alone, if you're a person that doesn't have a more experienced practitioner to rely on and learn from, that doesn't mean you can't do it.
that's right.
In fact, I'm going to keep coming back to books. Books have their place. There's a lot of really great books out there about ritual, about community. Is it okay to mention a book that I thought was
Yes,
helpful?
please.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
um, Deborah Blake.
Yeah.
I really like her book about creating. It's called, I think it's Everyday Witches Coven. And the name is misleading because it's not just about covens. It has information about communities, different kinds of communities, even communities of just two people, which happens,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So you can learn and design your first ritual, do the best you can. Because the truth of the matter is, you're going to grow, your rituals are going to grow, and the experiences are going to change as more people join and participate more.
Hmm.
So your first ritual is going to look very different than the next ones. The other thing I recommend is maybe you don't do it alone. If five or six people showed up to your first meeting or are interested, have a meeting with them, get their feedback, learn
Yeah.
together. Just try what works for the five or six of you. It doesn't have to look like every ritual that it doesn't have to look like anyone else's ritual or process. Find something that works for you. So there are solutions if you're starting out.
Love that.
It's a good thing to just get dirty. Just do it. Just get
Yeah,
out there and do it. Don't worry about doing it wrong. Don't worry about doing it right. Pick one in
Just
a
do it.
book. Yeah, and just do it. Make sure that you get out there and just try it. That's the important part.
no matter what you're doing today, a year from now, it's going to be different. It's going to
Yeah.
grow. There's going to be something you learn that you didn't know before. So, round one, draft one doesn't look like the next draft or the final outcome.
That's really what I love about this community is that there's so many different perspectives. Every time we have asked people to help design a ritual, people volunteer, they come to the Discord meeting and we start talking about what does the ritual or the holiday mean to you and how do you want to express that? And I've been loving seeing all the different things that come out of people and all the different ways that we honor the turning of the wheel. And that part's been very exciting for me.
That is something I really like about our community too. I'm constantly impressed by our planning sessions. So now that we have community that regularly attends, it's a little different from that first ritual. We'll schedule a remote meeting. We have a kind of a template we use as a jumping off point in a Word doc, very mundane, but very useful.
Very
And
helpful.
then we have a meeting and people pitch their ideas, like you're saying. And maybe it starts off in one place. And by the end of it, it's something completely different. Everyone's ideas just grow and evolve and build off each other. And everyone's excitement and enthusiasm and creativity comes out. And something you never thought a ritual for a particular holiday could be is born. And then it's just very unique and special and represents the flavor of the community that you're in. And that's something I really love. Everyone gives a lot of themselves to everything we do.
When we do our workshops, we tend to do a little opening and closing ritual and just kind of a little create community thing, which I adore actually. And I think sometimes that is people's very first introduction to doing circle with other people. And I think that's beautiful. And one of my favorite things is when someone who's come there for the very first time is asked, hey, does anyone here want to call a quarter? And they step forward and say, I've never done it before, but I'll do it. And I love that. That is like my absolute favorite. I love that part.
That is exciting.
Is there any part, through this whole process, what has surprised you the most, or what have you found the most joy in this almost year-long journey that we've been on?
It's hard to say just one thing, but I think, as I said before, as a massive introvert, once I got to know my community and form these connections, I can't get enough of you people.
Yeah, right?
A person who used to avoid plans and cancel plans and, you know, have trouble being in social situations for
You're
extended
stuck
periods
with
of
us.
time.
You're stuck with us, Shannon.
I don't mind.
Now we're doing tree planting in the community. We have Stitch and Bitch sessions and Dungeons and Dragons and book clubs and yeah.
Yeah, and it's fulfilling. It makes me happy. I want it all. It's not overwhelming when you're with the right people. You feel like you got your people. You're drawn to it, and the connections really surprised me. The other thing that surprised me is the diversity in practice and how people who are so very different and coming from so many different places can make a cohesive community. We don't have we're very fortunate. There's no conflict among us. We all get along very well, but we're all very different people with different backgrounds and different philosophies and different practices. And it all melds together.
That's why I like the idea of community in general, because there is a difference between communities and covens, and you can have one or multiple covens within a community, and you get these different diverse paths and journeys that are following different deities and different mythos. Not only does it help you kind of grow and expand as a person, but you get introduced to different ritual ideas or different deity concepts that you may have not otherwise exposed yourself to if you were alone.
Yes, exactly. And I've definitely, for example, before I joined community, I actually did not work with deity. And during my time learning about deity from other people and their experiences, that became part of my practice. That's a big
Yeah.
change in outlook and practice, but it happened to me because I came in contact with people who had that influence on me and gave me that level of understanding that you can't just get from.
Yeah. And I think that that diversity is one of the most amazing strengths that we have here. And Chelle, that leads me to my question for you, Chelle. you came here to this community from a Welsh traditionalist coven. And this is not that. This is very different from that. So, as someone who has come into this and has helped to, has been a big part of this community, what's that difference like? What can you tell us about your experience in Crystal City Circle and the difference between what you had before?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have the advantage of being able to relate it back to even further past experiences. Because yeah, I have been a part of I was initiated into a Welsh traditional coven in Salem, and I loved it very, very much, but it was very specific by the name Welsh tradition. So obviously, we're not doing anything other than Welsh type stuff. I had never personally spent a lot of time or been, I don't want to say for lack of interest, but I was never really pulled to heathenry, to Norse paganism, Norse witchcraft. And this group has kind of opened me up to that. And so I have learned a bunch of new things have coming here, but I like the fact that the diversity. And I can trace this back to our old community, Layla, from years and years ago. You know, Covens are great, and I love a good coven. I love that tight, close-knit, magical working. But I also like it when that coven can go to a bigger, wider community and kind of have experiences that are different and outside of your coven experience with different and outside people. It's kind of like, living with a familial unit and then going off to a family reunion and meeting the greater family. That's community has that sense of your greater family, and I do cherish that coven vibe very much. But coming to this community, I think being as small as it is, it's not a coven, but it almost gives me that coven vibe. But that's just a me thing because this is definitely not a coven, it's a community. But I think the size of it was a good transition for me. I think if I had bounced back from a traditional coven into like a 200 person strong community, that might have been like a shock. So I think kind of that transition to a really good growing community was good for me. And I love it here. Everybody's great. Everybody's fabulous. And so much knowledge in this group. And what I love about the people is that everybody is so witchy and talented and don't even really realize it. And it's like watching flowers bud. It's fabulous.
The fact that it is a growing community is important because we are changing. We're coming up on our 1 year anniversary, and we're getting a little more serious about things. We're starting to have all sorts of different events. There's people keep planning and not doing so great at planning pagan pride. We have plans we'd like to do in the future. We have plans we want to do right now. So we're going through some getting bigger pains. We're starting to need a website. We're starting to get more people come in from all different areas. We're doing rituals not just at the local UU, but also bigger rituals, overnight camping things at private land. And so we're getting bigger all the time. And that's coming with a little bit more responsibility. So I think as we go forward, having a group of people that work well together and communicate really well is important. So, do you have any advice for people to set like a foundation, or to what would your top three pieces of advice be maybe, or what advice would you think would be core to giving people if they wanted to have a community that could last a year plus?
Especially when it can start as a runaway train.
Right. So I think you really need to know what you want to create before you start. There's a lot of things to take into consideration. For example, is it a coven? Is it a community? Right? That's the
Right,
first big
right.
one. Is this private? Is it secret? Is it open? Is it welcoming? That's a big first determining factor in how you're going to structure things.
Mhm.
And then what's the purpose of community? Are we going to be very specific? Like you said, is it Welsh traditional? Is it heathen? Is it this? Is it eclectic? You have to think about what your community is because you're going to, if you choose to do community and not coven, you are in service of the community. Once you become, and this is how I see myself, once you become a community leader, you're it's like a sacred role, right? Is to hold space, to keep space going, to create places for these connections and these workings to happen. That is your mission after that point. Once you start this thing, that's what you have to do. And that is service. So, what you really need to know, aside from what you can and can't do yourself with your own limits, is what is needed? Where's the vacuum? Who is here? Ours, and about, do I live in a very populated area where maybe there's a large number of a particular kind of pagan, or do I live somewhere that isn't super populated? So maybe we have one of this kind and one of this kind and one of this kind. And since Corning is smaller, I assumed we weren't just going to find 100 heathens in a corner. We probably were going to have a more eclectic group of people. So I wanted to keep it open. I wanted to keep it welcoming. I wanted to keep it not rigid. And Layla, you saw that too. We wanted it to
Absolutely.
be welcoming. We wanted the
Hmm.
people to find each other. That was our purpose. Find one another, form connection, and learn. Learning was another big thing for us.
Yeah.
Kindred spirits we wanted to find. So you need to know what you want to create before you do anything.
Hmm.
Make sure it's serving who's around you. Because if you start off too rigid, like I'm a heathen, so I want a heathen base, or I'm Wiccan, so I want to make sure we only do ritual this way. If you start off like that, you're going to have too many people want to join in. People are going to feel unwelcome. They're not going to feel like they found their people.
It's
You
going to
have
get
to be
lonely
open and
quick.
fluid. It's gonna fall apart. People feel, I get the strong sense people feel like our community is a kind of home by the way they show up, by the way they're willing to give, how generous they are with their time and their talent and their skill. And that came because they felt welcome and wanted and loved and accepted. And if people don't show up and feel connected, you already lost the battle. You're
Exactly.
already on a downward fall. It has to be welcoming. And you might think to yourself, well, how do I do that? Like I said before, make sure it's not rigid, be open, invite community collaboration, have some rule and structure. You want to make sure there's rules in place for safety, privacy, security. But once that's all said and done, welcome different ideas into your space. Welcome different kinds of people showing up. Welcome people showing up once, being a
Yeah.
little hesitant and leaving and maybe not coming back, or only coming every now and then. You don't have to come to everything to be
Right.
part of it and to be welcome. You also want to consider where you're having it. Can everybody get there? Can enough people get there? Is it accessible to people? Do you have enough events that enough people can get to because of the hours they work or the places you're holding them?
Hmm.
And are you offering educational experiences that enough people are interested? You also want to collaborate with what people are interested in. And once you have that set up, lean on your community. Don't do it all yourself anymore. You get to a
That's a big
point,
one.
you want to keep it going. If you want it to grow, two people, Layla and I, can get a lot done. But I got to tell you, it's a lot easier now that we can rely on people to do things
Oh
and
my gosh, yes.
contribute. And they didn't even really need to be asked. They just kind of
No.
stepped in
Stepped
and they
into the
take it and they run
roles.
with it. And it's great. So once you get to that point, you don't have to do it alone. You have to facilitate it and make sure it stays on track, but you don't have to do it all yourself. And
Yeah.
that's how growth happens. It has to be sustainable.
And it's better that way. How wonderful is it? All the people contributing has changed and added flavor so much interest and education and things I never even thought of. I just love how everyone is more than willing, like you said, to step up and pitch in and give their energy, give their time to make this something because we've all been wanting this. We've all felt this lack, this void. And having it here means that people cherish it and they want to give that energy to it. And I think that's important because in any community, there's going to be different levels of what people can and can't give. So, as a community leader, you kind of have to facilitate that as well. Because even if they can't contribute, there are people who still need to be able to come to that community and participate in that. And so, meeting people where they're at and letting people who can contribute more do so and letting everybody kind of be there at their own pace and in their own way has been a lot of what makes this community beautiful, I guess. And I love seeing how everyone shows up.
And what I love also is, folks, I have witnessed someone show up to a workshop and at the very next ritual take one of the most prominent roles in the ritual and knock that shit out of the park.
Yeah.
So, And this person hadn't done ritual with other people. All they needed was someone to say, you want to do it? Do it. You want to do it however you want? We're going with it. And how beautiful was it? Like, to see people have the opportunity to step up and I want to call air. I've never called air before. I want to do this. And they're just told, okay, do it however you want. However you want to do it, you call air. Or I want to call the goddess. Okay, you want to do that? Do it. There's that opportunity for people to experiment and try things out and grow personally as well as with a group. And I love that about this community.
Before we end, I just want to remind people, reach out to your local library. Please, 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 please. Reach out to your local UU church. Look for metaphysical shops in your area. Check Mandragora Magica. It wasn't there before, but Crystal City Circle is there now. You never know when a new community is going to pop up, or if you yourself need to put a new community in there so other people can find you. So do you have any last words for our listeners before we go, Shannon?
Well, I've said it before, but I do think it's important to say again, if something doesn't exist, that might just mean that you have to do it.
That's
And
right.
if you have the idea and the motivation, you have the time to give to it, you're the one. You can do it. It's okay if it's messy in the beginning. It's okay if it doesn't look like other communities. It's okay if you feel like you don't know what you're doing. It'll come in time. You'll find people, you'll join together, you'll collaborate, and something beautiful will come of it. And then you'll create space that
Yes.
people can find each other and have connection, and it'll be beautiful, and you'll be glad you did it.
And then the work begins. And don't be afraid if only one person stands up and says, I'll follow you, because there is power in the first follower. There was Shannon as the leader, and there was me as the first follower. And I think I was the only person to respond to your Reddit post.
You were the only person, but you were the best person to respond, so it worked.
Well, thank you. You were the best person to post it. So between us, just two people, we now have a regular community of 20 some people. We have a growing online community. More and more people come all the time, and they find us and they're so happy and they're so grateful that it exists here. And unfortunately, there's even people who are a little too far out from us that are also looking for community. So hopefully they're listening and they can start something a little closer to home for them. I think that's the biggest thing is dare to put that first post out there and dare to be the first follower.
Be that fool. Jump off the cliff.
Well, thank you so much, Shannon, for joining us. And thank all of you for listening to this episode of Back on the Broomstick. Please like, subscribe, give us some reviews, give us some stars. It really helps the show out and it helps people to find us.
So, folks, create a community, be wise, be wicked,
And keep it witchy.